Now on to an increasingly popular category, Retrofit. This is a project in Oxford in the United Kingdom. It's transformation of Rhodes House. Please welcome Paul Williams from Stanton Williams. Congratulations.
Good afternoon. Paul Williams from Stanton Williams, as mentioned. This is a very different project to any of that I've seen you looking at this morning. It's a project that materialized because an organization outgrew a building it had been inhabiting for 100 years, realized that the building was inhibiting its growth and aspirations for change. So a lot of the staff and the people, their hearts were saying we must stay, and there were others, their heads were saying we should go. The debate ensued for quite a long time. The organization in question is the Rhodes Trust, an education charity which oversees the world-renowned Rhodes Scholarship in Oxford. The building itself is Rhodes House, a listed Grade 2 building located, Grade 2 star, listed in the centre of Oxford, designed by the architect Herbert Baker, completed in 1922. So we all knew that the level of intervention that has got to be carried out on this building was going to be considerable. The question the client was asking us as architects, can we get this through planning? People here know when it's a Grade 2 star building, it's more difficult. The changes need to be quite, well, not insignificant, but they shouldn't be large interventions. However, we knew this was going to be the case. Major structural work was going to be carried out to the house to enable the insertion, and this is what the brief wanted, a state-of-the-art 300-seat conference hall, foyer breakout spaces, plus additional site offices, residential accommodation, and all this to be carried out while the client was actually inhabiting the building. So it was quite a major undertaking. However, after a lot of discussion, the client and we decided a new building wasn't required, and we thought we could get the requirements of the brief through. And so dialogue started with the planners, conservation officers, Historic England in 2017. We were on site in 2020, and the building was open and working the end of last year. This gives you an idea of the sort of interior spaces that we're working with. The top two on the left are the sort of arts, crafts, interiors that the building has. The basement, you can see here, which is a captured space, divorced of any, which always had an archive in it. That is the space that we knew we had to inhabit with the new development. So, and you can see there the gardens in the back. The building itself is surrounded by a very beautiful garden, and that's something that was very much a part of what drove our designs as it developed. So here's a cross-section. You've got your two wings, and you've got the main central space, the two spaces in the middle. I've got the pointer there. They are light wells that you will see we covered in as the scheme developed. We dug out this area here to make a continuous lower level with daylight dropping down into the spaces. The big moves were we built and we created office spaces underground here and a glass pavilion, which I'll talk about in a while. The organizational logic of the whole site is we have offices on that left-hand side, the west wing. We have residential, earth-covered residential bedrooms on the east and bedrooms in the this wing here, the east wing. The central area was for the convention hall itself, conference centre, and dining for the scholars. So we had a clear organisational logic to this development. However, the level of intervention and structural work was quite immense. Now, the access going from north to south. There's the portico at the front of the building. Here you can see the portico here. We enter into that, and then we go into this big rotunda. This is where Herbert Baker put a memorial to the scholars who died during the First and Second World War. And it's that space that we looked at intensely, and this is where we made our first move, which is to form a staircase that takes you down to the lower level. So now you have this spiral stair drawing you down to the lower levels. The staircase, this is the staircase you can see here. The interesting thing is that the rotunda had this circular seating around the outside, and our discussions with the planners were by putting this staircase in the middle, and we know Herbert Baker wanted a sculpture in the middle. It never happened. We could actually strengthen the dialogue and the focus on the staircase around the outside as well. And obviously the movement up the spiral stair meant you focus on the war memorial and the writing above. There's a lot of play of light. This photograph gives you an idea of the sort of balustrading details and the perforations that we made in the stone, which is Gascoigne blue limestone. The pattern comes from the flooring that existed in the rotunda. It's a post-tensioned staircase. We have a compression ring that we formed this opening in the floor. That matapos stone in the middle is a granite stone that was on the first floor. We dropped down and incorporated that in the lower level. And then moving on, you see we then moved through the spaces here and formed, this is where our conference centre is here, and which meant we lifted the garden at that level to bring daylight in from the south. But I'll come to that in a minute. These are the light wells that are closed, that these are breakout spaces. And then when you enter the conference centre itself, the window opens up. You have the barrel vault and the coffers either side, which reduced the amount of concrete that we worked with. And importantly, coming back to this point, the whole route through the building, it's a sequence of compression of spaces and expansion of spaces, which adds to it strengthens the experience of moving through. That gives you an idea of the level of intervention. It was like an open heart surgery at times. We had monitors on all the facades of the building detecting any movement that might be taking place. Here you've got the raised, and there you can see on the raised plinth at that middle level with the conference space between. I see I only have a minute left, so I'm going to move on. The bedroom, you could hear on the east, we have the sunken courtyard for the accommodation, and on the other side we have the glazed pavilion for the meditation spaces and the spaces where the scholars inhabit the garden. The sunken bedroom accommodation, working with in brick here, not the clipsham stone of the house itself. These are now on the other side, underneath the glass pavilion. We have the offices that are bringing a lot of natural daylight down into the space. And the glass pavilion that you can see is floated off the floor here. That's for natural ventilation in the interior. And here we have the interior made out of ash. The idea is you've got this organic structure that is working with the trees and the landscape. But this is the space for 50 scholars can have dialogue within there, and they, as I said, inhabiting the garden, whereas the house itself is actually quite introverted, and the height of the windows is such that you never visually engage with a garden. So this is a very important foil to the whole scheme. Reflections for us are very beautiful. I think we celebrate glass, and we use them and position it so that it does reflect new and old. And that's the last slide even. See, my time's finished. Thank you.
Thank you. With one word, it's a very elegant project. Congratulations. It's, I think you changed the whole things, and then it feels as you haven't done anything, which is great, in my opinion. I just want to ask about this glass cube. Honestly, I'm not sure about the necessity of this new element. Mm-hmm. What do you feel, I'm curious about your side. Do you think that this project would lack something if you don't do this glass cube here?
Personally, I do feel that the glass pavilion is offering a lot to the scholars. It is, I'm not just saying that, it is the favorite space for the scholars to hang out in and spend time, because when you're in there, you are in the garden. And the important thing is when you're in the house itself, there's a very strong feeling of it being, it's capturing you. It's not in dialogue with the landscape at all, and the gardens are very beautiful. So we felt that this pavilion, one, it celebrates a new intervention, which it's interesting, the Trust themselves wanted that because they felt it changed our identity somewhat. But if I can make one other point about the glass building, the two sides, if I just go back to the, if I'm going to manage this, the sunken bedrooms on the one side are drawing fresh air in, and with ductwork in the ground, we're passively cooling the air, and that is what's actually cooling the conference center. So you have one lung that is bringing in air. The glass pavilion is actually capturing passive heat, and when heat is not needed, the excess heat is drawn down in the timber interior, and that actually is heating the hot water and spaces down in the office space below. So there are sort of very different approaches either side of the building, and they are two, I think, contrasting elements that...
Thank you.
Can you, staying on the glass pavilion, can you explain the proportions that you developed for the glass pavilion relative to the gardens and relative to the existing building?
Yes, it's 10 meters by 10 meters by 5. The height it is in dialogue, obviously, with the elevation of the house itself. I don't think I have, unfortunately, the slide that I've got doesn't show that. But it really was based on the geometry and the proportions of the Rhodes House itself. The positioning of it is directly above the offices that actually are sitting below this area. So they're working in tandem, the two of them. So where the warm air is drawn down, it is going into the sort of lower office space and then being threaded into the M&E system. It's interesting when working in a landscape like this, of course, you're also working and having to operate around tree root systems, and they have a fairly profound effect on where you can and can't locate, obviously, any new build within that area, and that applied, obviously, to the sunken residential areas to the east.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting the dialogue between the retrofit of the existing building and the intervention you made inside, but also the courage to make new pieces. I mean, I come from a country where this never be possible, because they don't like this kind of a dialogue between contemporary architecture and the historical one. So I'm very fan about this project, because it's demonstrating that it's possible to create a dialogue. And also, I think I appreciate your ideas of including in all the design strategies, also the sustainability strategies of ventilation, including is invisible, which I like the idea technology is not visible anymore because it's embedded in your design. So I thought it was an interesting kind of a dialogue and capacity to introducing this principle in existing buildings.
The energy levels actually being expended on the project now is no greater than what it was before.
Yeah?
But we've doubled the square meters of the whole project with this. But the interesting thing, I think, also is the dialogue we have with the planners, conservation officers, and Historic England, actually to reach a position where they're happy for us to work on a grade 2-star building. It's very contentious, some of these things. And I mean, it demanded a lot of dialogue, a lot of convincing, a lot of prototyping to get where we got to.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, it's a very, very elegant project, and even the detailing related to sustainability is very elegantly and very beautifully carried out. Congratulations.
Thank you.